shelf life milk for only $28.99 and bobtail dog food for just $148.99. And there's more. We'll give you a free Easter puppet when you spend 400 emalangeni or more while stock lasts. It's an Easter of more at your favorite Spar store.
It is Friday, the 15th of April 2022. Good evening and welcome to the news at 8 right here on Eswatini TV. I'm Lindoguhle Masugu. Standing with me tonight is Zaman Zimanze. Here are tonight's headlines. Her Majesty the Indlovukazi has urged pastors in the country to make every effort to keep it peaceful. Cases of stolen church properties reported to the police have shown a decrease as compared to previous years during Easter holidays. The Chief Immigration Officer says the removal of PCR tests has seen an increase of visitors into the country and those going out of the country for the holidays compared with the past 2 years. Well, let's get straight into the news in detail. Her Majesty the Indlovukazi has urged pastors in the country to make every effort to keep it peaceful. Her Majesty says it is dismaying to see that some pastors seem to be part of acts that undermine peace in the country. The Queen Mother was speaking at the Good Friday service which was held at the National Church in Lobamba.
It delighted the nation to have Her Majesty the Queen Mother grace the Good Friday service, following that their Majesties have not made public appearances in religious events since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic about 2 years ago. Friday's service at the National Church in Lobamba, also graced by a Makosigati to His Majesty the King and Balondolozi and their Royal Highnesses, saw the country joining hands with the rest of the world in remembering the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and His death at Calvary. Congregants feasted on a variety of biblical messages that were shared by Her Majesty and some pastors from a wide range of denominations. Her Majesty urged pastors in the country to guard against being part of elements who lead the nation astray and undermine peace.
Sifanane nebafunzi baJesu. Tinyawo tethu tende njani tikonza. Uyathi ngiyengive buhlungu bazalwane. Angithe ngafihla ngimake. Ngigogo waleli. Ngiyengive buhlungu mangibona labafaka bokhololo ngibabone bazuka basi. Nkosi. Uyabona ngiyengikhala etinyembeti ngisawu Nkosi. Kodwa vele lendvodza le alahlwa lezulwini. Lo muntu uphakamise isandla wafunga wathi Nkosi, ngifuna ukukusebenzela. Ngifuna ukulanza abantu ehlathini. Ngibalese ekukhanyeni. Mase nje ngikubona ngizuba lapho. Ngimikisa lehlathini ngathi ngenda kona. Ningasho nje lo gogo soyahlanya lo. Usibhekisa kuphi? Akasimikise ekukhanyeni. Bafundisi nani bomake bakhokheli, babishopi kade. Babishopi nani nonke bazalwane.
Her Majesty said it is never too late to repent and to get things right with God.
Uma umuntu eva livilana avule. Mina ngiyawungena. Ngende njani ngidle naye adle naye. Yebazalwane. vula awushiye umnyango ngalabanye bangacabanga bakhona labancane bacabanga ukuthi bashiwo sivalo vula la ngekhathi uvule uyangena Jesu makangena wena njani uyahlala.
The Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini said the nation was delighted to see Her Majesty at the service after 2 years. His Excellency expressed confidence that the prayers that were made at the service would help restore peace and calm in the country and urged the nation to commit to peace.
Lilanga leli bese setayele kusinjalo ngeminyaka sibe sihlanganyela nemakhosi kugubha lolusuku. So ushito umfundisi la namemetela umnikelo ukuthi sekuphele iminyaka lemibili live lingakakhona ukuthi lihlangane sonke siyathi ke kusibe kunebulukhuni besifo seCovid. Neliqiniso Dlovukazi ukuthi ngikhulumela wonke lo la nangithi sive siyajabula kubona iNdlovukazi emkhathini wayo. Siyajabula kuyibona iNdlovukazi ihlanganyele kanye nathi kulomsebenzi. Siyethemba ukuthi lo mthandazo losowendiwe wendelwa nelive nokuthula kwalo ukuthi utawuhamba libanga lelitse.
The service will move to royal residencies on Saturday. His Royal Highness Princess Melane unpacked the program for Saturday.
Sisive semaswati sitokusho njalo kuwe Nkosi Jesu kwekuthi nguwe wedwa lo wahlatshwa singesuka kuwe siye kubani ngoba kuphila lokuphakathe kuku. Bafundisi kusasa sikalozitha kuyumgqosha kaSomandla imbubi ngwenyama yemaswati ngatheni kuyofunwa lunyawo lwaJesu engabevele bese kuthi bomake baselidzidzi eKhenyeni bohlangana nendlovu yemhlaba lapho bese kuthi labasha baba la estadium nabo batothola tifundo letingangabo.
Pastors and bishops preached on the 7 sayings of Jesus Christ on the cross. On the news, I'm Sandile Makanya reporting at the National Church in Lobamba.
Easter holidays is also a time where Christians learn the importance of forgiveness and are expected to do the same. The news crew visited different churches during the Easter holidays and were explained to the meaning of Easter services and its importance.
The news crew paid a visit to different churches to find how they celebrate the Easter holidays and its meaning to Christians. We started at the Methodist Church, which had gathered at John Wesley School in Babane, which was fully packed. Hind Shonga, the second steward in the church, says Easter means the taking away of sins from Christians. He says Christians were also taught to forgive one another now and again.
Sito celebrate kufa nekuvuka kwenkosi yethu Jesu Kristu. Sineke kufa kwa Jesu kuyinto lenkulu empilweni yemaKristu kufa kwa Jesu ngoba Jesu weda emhlabeni kute sikhulula enyameni nasemphefumulweni. So ngalelanga leli nje sikhumbula tonke timo uNkulunkulu noma lokunganye Jesu lengakuto empilweni yakhe lokusinika lithemba nathi ukuthi nasihamba kuleto timo leto loyo lesimkhontako lesimlandzelako naye watihamba letimo leto.
He says the 7 sayings of Christ on the cross symbolizes that his ministry have been finished on earth. At the Nazarene Church in Babane, the sermons were categorized into that for the youth and the elderly. Fanalini Mkachwa says the church had special services for the youth.
Siphambano sesikhumbuta ngelutsandvo uNkulunkulu lalubonakalisa kithi sibantu. Kuba seRoma 5 verse 8 lithi livula uNkulunkulu lutsandvo lwaNkulunkulu silubona nganaku kwekuthi ngesikhathi sitoni Jesu wasifela. Sikhumbutana ngaloko Sikhumbutana hayi ngetono tethu mbambambamba kodwa sikhumbutana ngekusebenta nangeluthando lwaNkulunkulu lalubonakalisile ekoneni kwethu.
He says the death of Christ also talks to bearing of sins holistically in each individual. For Eswatini TV News, I am Kian Msibi, Mbabane.
The cases of stolen church properties reported to the police have shown a decrease when comparing to other years during the Easter holidays. According to the Police Information Communications Officer, Pindile Vilagati, police officers will be visible across the country to ensure safety during these Easter holidays.
Church break-ins cases this year have decreased when being compared to other years. According to the Police Information Communications Officer Pindile Vilagati, different churches' material were reported to be stolen in the past years. Vilagati says this year they haven't recorded alarming cases thus far. Vilagati urges church leaders to ensure that they tighten security.
Siyabona ke ukuthi kusengachubeka kwendeke njengalokho bantu vele basetindzaweni tekukhontela. Siyacela ukuthi sichubeke sibazalwane, siqinise isecurity labo labasigadzelako nasetimotweni kube nebantfu labagatsile. Nasetindlini nakungaba possible simane sishintshane la sikhembe khona sichubeke sigadze kungaze kulahleke timpahla tethu kani thina sisakhonta inkosi.
Vilagati also assured the nation that police officers will be visible across the country to bring order and security. For Eswatini TV News Ondomlangeni with Samgel Suekoza in Mbabane.
The Chief Immigration Officer in the Ministry of Home Affairs, Makhosi Simelane, says the removal of PCR tests has seen an increase of visitors into the country and those going out of the country for the holidays as compared to with the past 2 years when restrictions were strict.
The lifting of PCR tests as requirements for cross-border travelers has seen an increase in people coming into the country for Easter holidays as well as those leaving the country compared to the past 2 years where the restrictions were still strict. The Chief Immigration Officer in the Ministry of Home Affairs, Makhosi Simelane, says there was also an increase in people taking travel documents the past few weeks.
We have seen a lot of changes. Primarily, we started seeing the changes in the number of people that came to apply for travel documents from our offices. The number rose quite sharply during the past week, where we saw quite a number of people that were applying, indicating that they indeed wanted to travel. Yes, that then played itself out to the borders. We are told that there has been a significant rise in figures for some borders, in particular Mahamba border, where there was actually a 2-hour extension from the usual 2 hours, from the usual 10 p.m. closing time to 12 midnight. We indeed have seen quite a number of people using that border. We also can also indicate that there are currently 5 borders that are operating between us and the Republic of South Africa. These borders being Ngwenya border, Matsamo border, Mananga border, Lavumisa and Mahamba. We have seen quite a significant rise in the number of people that are crossing the border, crossing to South Africa and also coming into Eswatini in these borders. And the numbers indeed compared to the past 2 years, when there were conditions of travel were still very strict, we have seen quite a number of people traveling during this particular time.
Reporting, I am Kian Msibi, Ngwenya.
Lobamba small entrepreneurs came out in their numbers to showcase their products during the Easter holiday services in Lobamba. The entrepreneurs say that they are optimistic that this year they will be able to recover in business following being hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Small entrepreneurs in Lobamba and surrounding areas came in their numbers to showcase different products during the Easter service in Lobamba. Speaking on Friday, the entrepreneur says that this year's service will help them recover since they were hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Siyathemba ukuthi sitakala noma kungafani naseminyakeni nje because dasigcina kuthengisa bekuthengwa kakhulu. Nyalo bantu bancane kwabonala laba attendile nje bancane ngicabanga ukuthi sizathu iCovid ngicumbe bantu abakajovi labanye besaba nalokutesta so abekho vele bantu.
Sisezama mfanami siyabona ukuthi cha kutaba khona.
Mina ngitakwesibili kudothengisa and
lokhu bekune COVID kusi-affecte kakhulu thina sibosomabhizinisi ngoba sifundisa abamfana sima-single parent. And then namuhla sinelithemba lekuthi engcenye khona lesitakucosha.
Those who had the opportunity to showcase each time during the services stated that they were able to pay for their children's school fees with the profits they got. Some, however, stated that before, throngs of people took part in these services, while this year only few congregants are part of the Easter services, which will mean that very few people will support their businesses. In the past 2 years, the services were halted due to the COVID-19 pandemic. For Eswatini TV News, Sondomlangeni with Samgel Siwekoza in Lobamba.
The inflation rise of 7% recorded by the United Kingdom on Wednesday will have a long impact on African economies, such as an increase in import commodities. This has been said by economist Tembikosi Dube.
The United Kingdom on Wednesday reported a consumer price inflation rise of 7%, which according to economists is the highest in 3 decades. It is reported that the annual inflation rate climbed to 7% in March from 6.2% in February, its highest since March 1992, and by more than expected by most economists. Outlook to Africa, Eswatini included, local economist Tembikosi Dube says the rise of inflation rate in developed countries will have a long-term effect to the African economies.
Rise in inflation to 7%, which is one of the highest in many decades. And this is one of the most developed countries. And we're seeing a rise in inflation rate in countries like the US and other developed countries. One of the drive for the price rise is the war between Ukraine and Russia. But we should also consider the fact of the effect of the COVID-19 that affected the supply chain globally. So the effects, actually, we are reaping the effect of those economic uncertainties or instabilities. So we in Africa, actually, we are also not really directly affected because inflation is just an indicator. But the issue is it is showing us that there is a price rise, and what we can expect is that we as countries in the region, we can also see a high rise in inflation. And we pray we don't get into a double-digit figure, which will be a sign of a high level of unemployment. The unfortunate part is that as the prices rise, the poor person is made even poorer. Life becomes harder and harder for that for the person. They normally say it's a man on the street.
Dube also mentioned that the inflation rise in developed countries calls for local economists to come up with policies that would enable local production to substitute imports from these countries. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I'm Samkel Suekoza with Sondomlangeni, Babane.
The Kingdom of Eswatini loses 30% of maize in post-harvest loss every harvest season. This has been said by the Director of Agriculture, Nelson Mavuso.
The Ministry of Agriculture says most maize in farms have reached harvest maturity and it is ready to be picked up. The Director of Agriculture, Nelson Mavuso, says the Kingdom of Eswatini loses 30% of maize in harvest losses every year. The director says this is due to the use of inappropriate harvest time and method by farmers.
Live etulu kwakuba selilime kahle kangaka sivuno sisihle emasimini silahlekelwa ngilokungetulu kwa 30% in terms of post harvest losses. Sizathu lesikhulu saloko ngilokuthi ukhanze ukuthi silima umbila wethu suyiyekele emasimini uze wengce isikhathi sawo sekuvuna. Noma indlela lesivuna ngato ngiletinye letingasito leti kahle. Ndawubekisa nje ukuthi uma umbila wakho uvuthwe noma sowulungele ukuthi ungawuphika nyalo ngabo February, March, April. Ukhanze ukuthi wena utawumela ukuthi kuyawuze kuvalwe itikolo ngesikhathi lesitsite noma kuyawuze kufike boJune ngikhathi uvuna. Lo mbila lo ngaleso sikhathi leso uvuna ukhanza ukuthi sowulimele kakhulu.
The director also touched on the appropriate harvest methods to avoid post-harvest losses.
Lokunye lesingakhutsa thatha indlela tekuvuna. Labanye balimi nabavunako bafike bathathe lesibhulutsha nje lapha eluhlangene lumile. Labanye basebenzisa imethod lekuthiwa stocking. lapho uthi sika khona leti inhlanga uthi mise inqumbi bese uhlala phansi lapho soyadibutha. Siyakukhuthaza ke lokho ngoba kufaka into letimbili ukuthi leti inhlanga ungathi ukuthi butha tonke la nsimini yakho bese uhlala phansi lo ngakaluthindi lo ngakaliphuthathi uhlanga lusala ngalapho lo luthethe lwabuya ngala eceleni kwakho ngilosulucadile lo so yathi ukuthi ubuthe wonke lo mbila lo. Kwesibili lokulusika loluhlanga kuyasida. Isihlava lesinyona sivamisa kuba khona emasimini ethu siyancipha emangweni ngalokuthi isihlava ebusika siyehla sibe ngaphasi kwemhlabathi ngilapho sibese sinjinja khona sibalivivana. Uma ke usijubile sangafika lapho lamakhatata asibulala lesihlava utawukhanza ukuthi ensimini yakho sitaba sincane sihlava ngeminyaka lo landzelako uma nisebenzise leyo ndlela leyo ngoba ngulapho sihlale khona ebusika ngephasi kwemhlabathi sehla ngaloluhlanga size sibe ngephasi kwemhlabathi.
The director also mentioned that the country's goal is to reduce post-harvest losses to at least 7%. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I'm Samkel Swekoza with Sondomblangeni, Malkans.
In sports news, Women's Super League executive member Sibongile Skachel says the age gap amongst the clubs is what has caused the league to look uncompetitive, as some clubs have collected maximum points while some are yet to register a single point. Skachel says some clubs have players who are aged 12 and are inexperienced to play at the senior level.
The current Women's Super League has challenges that have raised concerns to those who are in charge of the games. Sibongile Skachel is one of the executive members of the league, says the age gap between clubs where some of the teams have players who are young as 12 is what has caused the difference in the performance of the clubs.
The problem is with our league, you find that new players have been induced and the players are under age. They are under the league, the initial age that the league is supposed to be taking in. I think we should be having above 17 years old players who will be taking part in this league. But instead, the teams have introduced the under 12 years, the 13 years, and so forth. And these players are inexperienced, and they have never played anywhere. And these players have jumped the stages of development, under 13, under 15, and then you put them into the senior league, and that is impossible for them.
Skachel concluded mentioning that not having a title sponsor for the league is also another issue that is also making the league not to grow to its heights. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports, I'm Linda Dlamini. Babani.
Denver Sundowns head coach Ikabot Masocha says his club has enough good players who are supposed to be fighting for the title and not fighting for relegation. Masocha was speaking after Sundowns defeated Tinyosi by 2-0.
MTN Premier League continued on Good Friday when at Mavuso Sports Center, Denver Sundowns faced Tinyosi. Both teams were from a defeat last weekend. In the first half, both teams tried their luck, but the first half ended goalless on both sides. In the second half, Sundowns looked better after changes made by coach as they got their first goal through an own goal, with Mike Dombo being a threat to the Tinyosi defense. Sundowns' Rican Charles doubled the lead for Sundowns as the game ended with Sundowns leading by 2-0. Sundowns coach Ikabot Masocha says the performance of his players showed that they should be fighting for the title, not relegation.
Said from day one that Sundowns, I don't believe with the quality that they have, we are supposed to be, labeled the relegation candidates. Obviously, the log doesn't lie. But the quality that is there, we don't need to fight relegation. We just need to be going through, competing favorably with the big teams up there.
The Tinyosi coach Mbumelelo Ngwenya says his side had been unlucky with the chances they got.
But come match day, we can't take our chances. Come match day, we can't take our chances. I mean, first half we had clear-cut chances. They were playing high line, we were able to break and get behind them, but we couldn't find the back of the net.
In other games, Malandi Chiefs defeated Vovovo by 1-0. Tambuti defeated Tabankulu Kellys by 1-0, while Manzini Wanderers defeated Sipes by 3-2. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports, I'm Linda Dlamini. Mbabane.
And that is how we come into the end of tonight's bulletin. But before we leave you, let's recap the headlines. Her Majesty the Indlovukazi has urged pastors in the country to make every effort to keep it peaceful. Cases of stolen church properties reported to the police have shown a decrease as compared to previous years during Easter holidays. The Chief Immigration Officer says the removal of PCR tests has seen an increase of visitors into the country and those going out of the country for the holidays compared with the past 2 years. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. From all of us here at Eswatini TV News, it's good night.